Good morning, Fairhaven. It is Friday, April 3rd, 2020. Jim Killam here. I have some news headlines for you. Hope you're having a good morning so far. Mask guidelines and who should be wearing masks and when is currently going on. I'll read you part of this story from the New York Times. The Centers for Disease Control has been preparing to recommend that everyone wear face coverings in public, according to a federal official, although President Trump said Thursday that any guidance would be voluntary. And he says if people want to wear them, they can. Dr. Deborah Birx, who is leading the White House's coronavirus response, reminded Americans that federal distancing guidelines are still the most important step to slow the spread of the coronavirus. I can report that from being in Woodman's grocery store yesterday, about half of the people I saw were wearing masks and about half were not. And I think we're seeing more and more people wearing masks in public, which is fine, not a bad thing at all. And it's helping people to be a little bit safer. The guidelines are just a little bit unclear for everybody right now because no one's quite sure what is the most effective way to handle this. A little bit more here from the Times. The CIA has warned that China is vastly understating its infections and that its count can't be relied upon for models predicting the virus's course. So the numbers coming out of some countries, I know like North Korea has said no cases there. Well, certainly there are, but that's kind of what happens in a totalitarian state, I guess. Another news item here, the Democratic National Committee has moved its presidential convention to mid-August from mid-July. That's going to be held in Milwaukee. And that would be the week before the Republican convention, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's look at a couple other things. Here's a story from the BBC, but it's BBC America, and it's about grocery stores and how, well, the headline on this says, while the sight of empty supermarket shelves may lead shoppers to fear food shortages, experts in the food supply chain say the system is built to endure. This is an encouraging story because it says grocery stores are not going to be running out of food. And again, our experience here locally has been there's plenty of food and there are no shortages. Let me read you one of the paragraphs out of this story. As April begins and shoppers continue to bulk buy, grocery chains have jumped into action. Retailers have united with manufacturers, warehouse workers, and supply chain operators to implement emergency policies to meet these skyrocketing demands. But even amid the uncertainty and despite the seeming scarcity, experts across the food system are looking to reassure us against what could be shoppers' ultimate fear, that an overburdened food supply chain could lead to a food shortage. And this story goes on to say, there is no concern about that, that the supply chain for grocery is built to handle something like this, and that everything is in pretty good shape. And this says, too, at one time, grocery stores are carrying about 20 to 30 days of inventory on hand in the store. And so, and even after that, there is extra. So, yeah, again, no concerns about grocery stores running out of food. If you are a baseball fan, you may know this. White Sox broadcaster Ed, here, I'll just read you part of this. He was a longtime radio broadcaster for the team and played 11 seasons in the major leagues back in the 1970s and early 80s. And, again, most recently had been a broadcaster for the Chicago White Sox. So Ed Farmer has died. Locally, there was a huge food handout yesterday at City First Church. That's the church that used to be called First Assembly of God at Spring Creek and Mulford. They handed out 43,000 pounds of food to about 2,550 people Thursday morning, and hundreds of cars were lined up along Mulford Road, and it was basically for people who needed food, so it was kind of a giant food pantry. The church partnered with Convoy of Hope to distribute the food along with toilet paper, diapers, and baby food. And let me look. Okay, the pastor of the church, Jeremy DeWeert, says, "This is not the time for the church to shrink back, but for the church to rise up. Church is not a building, it is people, it is us. As our community is faced with great challenges, we are seeing people respond to these needs with great generosity. Thank you to everyone who has given to make today possible. This is the time for all of us to come together and help." So again, that was Thursday. Other news from Winnebago County, there are 6 new cases of the coronavirus reported, so that takes our county number to 30 now. These cases range from people in their 30s to people in their 60s. We've had 1 death from the virus here. It was a man in his 60s. And here's what Health Director Dr. Sandra Martel said: "We need to continue our..." So Martel said Winnebago County received a B- rating for residents observing the social distancing guidelines. So as a county, we need to do better. B- is not where we want to be. And so face masks and those types of things will probably help us do a little better on that. One last story here. This is from Christianity Today, and it's about the Museum of the Bible, which is in Washington, D.C., and they were involved in some controversy because of some antiquities from the Middle East that turned out to be stolen. They didn't steal them, but they bought them unwittingly from people who stole them. So I'll read you part of this Christianity Today story. Steve Green, president of Hobby Lobby and chairman of the Museum of the Bible, is returning 11,500 antiquities to the Iraqi and Egyptian governments. The ancient clay seals and fragments of papyrus do not have complete documentation and may have been looted or stolen. Green said he acquired the antiquities before the Washington, D.C. Museum opened in November 2017, when he didn't understand the importance of proper provenance and trusted the word of unscrupulous dealers. And his quote is, "These early mistakes resulted in Museum of the Bible receiving a great deal of criticism over the years. The criticism resulting from my mistakes was justified." The announcement comes on the heels of a museum-funded investigation that found the 16 fragments of the Dead Sea Scroll on display at the Museum of the Bible are all forgeries, the latest in a string of controversies that cast a shadow on its collection. So the museum has been honest about this. They just weren't careful enough at the beginning. Clearly something they should be owning. So that's that story. That is the news for Friday. It's a fairly light day in news other than all the coronavirus news, and not a whole lot new to report there. But we are just keeping an eye on that. I hope you are having a good day at Fairhaven and have a great weekend as well. We will talk to you on Monday. God bless.